Welcome to Shadow Frames, where forgotten images reveal their darkest secrets. Tonight we examine a seemingly innocent photograph from 1902, a captured moment of Victorian sentimentality that harbored something unseen for over a century. The photograph was discovered during the renovation of a Massachusetts estate last spring. Nestled between the pages of a water-damaged family Bible, the sepia-tinted image shows two young women in high-necked lace dresses, their hair elaborately pinned in the fashion of the early 20th century. They sit primly on what appears to be a garden bench, hands folded in identical poses, looking directly at the camera with solemn expressions common to photography of that era. According to the faded inscription on the back, they are Agnes and Eleanor Thornfield, ages 23 and 21 respectively, photographed in the summer of 1902. The sisters bear a striking resemblance, both with oval faces, dark eyes, and the same slight tilt of the head. There is nothing immediately alarming about the image. It is, by all appearances, merely a standard portrait of two sisters from a well-to-do family. But when the photograph was digitally enhanced and cleaned as part of the local historical society's preservation project, the technicians noticed something peculiar. Between the two sisters there appears to be a third figure, subtle, almost translucent, but undeniably present. A third sister, sitting precisely in the middle, her outline just visible enough to discern another high-necked dress, another solemn face, another pair of folded hands. What makes this discovery particularly disturbing is that no record exists of a third Thornfield sister. The family genealogies, meticulously kept in the county archives, mention only Agnes and Eleanor. Birth records, census data, and even personal diaries from surviving family members never reference another daughter. The mystery deepened when researchers interviewed the last surviving descendant of the Thornfield family, a 94-year-old great-niece of Eleanor. When shown the enhanced image, her reaction was unsettling. "That's impossible," she whispered. There were only ever two sisters, just Agnes and Eleanor. Yet when pressed about family stories, she admitted to childhood memories of hearing her grandmother mention a name in her sleep, Constance, always followed by urgent whispers of apology. Parish records from the local church yielded one cryptic entry, a death notice from 1898. 4 years before the photograph was taken, mentioning a C. Thornfield, with no age or cause of death listed. The notice was crossed out in black ink with a single word scrawled in the margin, unmentionable. What happened to this third sister that caused her to be erased from family memory? Why does she appear in a photograph taken years after her apparent death? And perhaps most disturbing of all, why do digital analysis tools indicate that the spectral figure in the middle appears to be holding something in those neatly folded hands, something small and metallic that catches the light in a way that suggests a blade? The Thornfield sisters' photograph raises haunting questions about family secrets and the lengths to which people will go to rewrite their own histories. But perhaps some things refuse to remain forgotten, even when everyone agrees to look the other way. The discovery of the spectral third sister sparked a flurry of research that led our team to the Thornfield estate's neglected West Wing, which had remained sealed since 1912. The Historical Society obtained permission to break the rusted padlock, revealing rooms left exactly as they had been over a century ago. Among the dust-shrouded furnishings, we found a small writing desk containing a leather journal belonging to Agnes Thornfield. The pages were brittle with age, the handwriting increasingly erratic toward the final entries. Most telling was what appeared to be the last entry, dated April 18, 1902, just months before the photograph was taken. "Constance visited again last night," Agnes wrote, standing at the foot of Eleanor's bed, watching. "I dare not tell Eleanor, for the doctor insists these visions will fade once I resume taking my tonic, but the tonic clouds my thoughts, and I must remain alert. Constance seems different now, less accusatory, more beseeching. What forgiveness can we offer when the sin cannot be undone?" Further investigation uncovered medical records indicating that Agnes had been treated for female hysteria and delusions, following what was cryptically referred to as the unfortunate incident on the lake. The prescribing physician noted that Agnes insisted on seeing her deceased sister regularly, particularly on moonlit nights. Local newspaper archives revealed a brief mention of a boating accident in 1898. 3 Thornfield sisters had embarked on an afternoon row, but only 2 returned. The article carefully avoided details, stating merely that tragedy befell the youngest daughter and that the family requests privacy in their time of mourning. Most chilling was our discovery in the parish records of St. Mary's Church. The burial registry showed that Constance Thornfield, aged 19, was interred on June 7, 1898, in the family plot. However, when our team visited the cemetery, her gravestone was conspicuously absent. In its place was a small, unmarked stone, weathered beyond its years. The groundskeeper, whose family had maintained the cemetery for generations, spoke reluctantly of a family legend. "My grandfather told me the Thornfields insisted the grave remain unmarked. They came at night to remove the original stone. Strange thing was, he swore they brought the girl with them, all dressed in white, standing between her sisters while they worked. Perhaps most disturbing was what we found concealed beneath the floorboards, in what must have been Constance's bedroom. A small wooden box containing a silver penknife with the initials CT delicately engraved on its handle. The blade was tarnished except for a dark, rusty residue that preliminary tests indicate is blood. The Historical Society debate continues. Was Constance deliberately erased from family history because of scandal, or something more sinister? Did Agnes's apparent mental deterioration stem from guilt, grief, or genuine supernatural encounters? Most puzzling of all, why would the Thornfield sisters arrange for a formal portrait that so clearly included the space for a third sister, who, by all accounts, had been dead for 4 years? The apparition of Constance grew increasingly clear as our investigation deepened. We consulted Dr. Amelia Whitcomb, an expert in early photographic techniques at Miskatonic University, who examined the original photograph under specialized lighting. "This is not a double exposure or darkroom manipulation," Dr. Whitcomb explained, pointing to distinctive patterns in the emulsion. "The third figure appears to have been physically present when the photograph was taken, yet somehow exists at a different frequency, if you will." Her analysis revealed something we had initially overlooked. The garden bench in the photograph was positioned directly before a reflecting pool. Yet strangely, while Agnes and Eleanor cast proper reflections in the water, the space between them showed no middle figure. Instead, the water's surface revealed ripples emanating from an unseen disturbance precisely where Constance's reflection should appear. Our search through county records yielded the disturbing circumstances surrounding the boating accident. 3 witnesses from the neighboring property reported hearing screams from the lake that afternoon in 1898, followed by frantic splashing. When they arrived at the shore, they found Agnes and Eleanor in their dripping dresses, claiming Constance had swum to the opposite shore after a disagreement. No further investigation occurred after the influential Thornfield patriarch intervened. One witness, 12-year-old Thomas Merrick, later recorded his observations in a school composition we discovered in the town's educational archives. "The Thornfield ladies did not look like people whose sister had swum away," he wrote. "They looked like people who had seen the devil." Perhaps most revealing was our interview with Reverend Phillips, whose grandfather had served as pastor at St. Mary's during the Thornfields' time. He reluctantly shared a collection of parish correspondence, including a troubled letter from his grandfather to the diocese. "I can no longer in good conscience administer communion to the elder Thornfield sisters," the Reverend had written. "Not after what was whispered in confession. Though I am bound by sacred obligation to maintain their confidence, I fear for their souls, and perhaps my own for maintaining silence." The property's groundwater analysis yielded unexpected information. The small lake where Constance allegedly drowned showed abnormal preservation properties. Organic materials submerged there decomposed far more slowly than normal. Local rumors had long held that the lake had unusual properties, which the family dismissed as superstition. Eleanor's personal correspondence, found in the West Wing, revealed her declining mental state following the photograph session. In a never-sent letter to her fiancé, she wrote, "Agnes insists the photographer followed her instructions perfectly, though I thought him quite queer for positioning us with such space between us. When we received the finished portrait, I finally understood. She believes leaving room for Constance will appease her, but I fear it has only made her presence stronger. I feel her watching, always watching. The knife disappeared from my vanity yesterday, the one I used that day on the lake when she threatened to reveal everything about Father." What exactly had Constance threatened to expose? Why did the sisters agree to be photographed with their dead siblings' space preserved between them? And most perplexingly, why has modern analysis of the water droplets visible on the wooden bench revealed that they only appear in a perfect circle surrounding where the spectral Constance sits, as if even now, years later, she emerges dripping from the depths? The revelation of Eleanor's unsent letter triggered a new direction in our investigation. If Eleanor had used a knife that day on the lake, what truly happened to Constance? We focused our attention on the Thornfield patriarch, Judge Ezekiel Thornfield, whose legal influence had apparently silenced any investigation into his daughter's death. County courthouse archives yielded disturbing details about Judge Thornfield's career. 3 months before Constance's drowning, he had presided over a controversial trial involving a young woman accused of moral indecency. His unusually harsh sentencing had been criticized in private correspondence between legal colleagues, with one noting the judge seemed personally wounded by the case. We discovered Constance had been volunteering at a settlement house for impoverished women, work her father vehemently opposed. The settlement house records contained a half-written article in Constance's handwriting detailing the exploitation of young female factory workers by prominent businessmen, including several who were close associates of her father. The photograph itself yielded another unsettling detail when examined under ultraviolet light. What appeared to be watermarks on the original print revealed a distinct pattern around the spectral figure. Not random water damage, but deliberate markings in the shape of fingers grasping upward, as if someone were trying to climb out of the photographic paper itself. Our team located the photographer's ledger in a regional museum archive. The entry for the Thornfield sisters' sitting contained an unusual note. Special request. Sisters insist on precise spacing. Mention tribute to departed. Elder sister brought lake water in silver flask, insisted on sprinkling bench before sitting. Most peculiar. Charged extra. Agnes's medical records grew increasingly troubling after the photograph was taken. Her physician noted, patient claims the image of their deceased sister grows clearer in the photograph with each passing day. When I examined the photograph myself, I saw only 2 sisters, though I admit the composition leaves an odd central gap. Miss Thornfield became quite agitated, insisting I was blind to what was plainly visible. Most disturbing was our discovery in the estate's gardening shed. Behind a false wall, we found a sealed jar containing what appears to be lake water, preserved for over a century. Floating within is a tattered piece of lace matching the dress worn by Constance in the photograph. Scratched into the jar's lid are the words, "She rises still." Local folklore researcher Marianne Sowell shared an overlooked regional superstition. In certain New England communities, there existed a belief that a drowned person could be bound to return through water-soaked photographs. The ritual required the living to acknowledge the space the dead should occupy and to incorporate water from the drowning site into the photographic process. The question remains whether Agnes and Eleanor were attempting to bring Constance back through some misguided ritual, or if they were performing an act of appeasement, creating a space for a sister who refused to stay buried. What becomes increasingly clear is that the sisters were not simply posing for a portrait that summer day in 1902. They were participating in something far more consequential, a ceremony whose effects continue to ripple forward through time, bringing Constance's presence into increasingly sharper focus with each passing year. The Thornfield estate was scheduled for demolition this month, the land sold to developers planning luxury condominiums. Our investigation faced sudden urgency as workers began clearing the property. During final documentation of the premises, our team gained access to a hidden cellar beneath the boathouse, a space absent from all architectural plans. The small underground room contained a single item, a photographic development tray carved from stone, stained dark with chemicals and something that appeared to be blood. The tray's bottom featured unusual inscriptions, symbols resembling those found in certain obscure 19th century spiritualist texts. More striking was the discovery that the tray was positioned to collect groundwater seeping through the wall, water from the same lake where Constance met her fate. This connected with another discovery. Agnes Thornfield had not merely been a grieving sister, but an amateur photographer. Her personal effects included receipts for chemicals and equipment, along with correspondence with several known practitioners of spirit photography. One letter from a Boston medium warned Agnes explicitly, "The method you propose is dangerous beyond measure. The threshold between worlds requires passage in one direction only. To create a doorway as you describe may allow return, but what returns may not be what departed." We located Agnes's darkroom in a converted pantry, sealed behind wallpaper for decades. The walls were covered with failed attempts at capturing Constance's image, photographs showing progressively more distinct manifestations between the 2 sisters. These earlier images revealed something the final portrait concealed. Constance's expression changed with each attempt, beginning with confusion, shifting to recognition, and finally settling into what can only be described as malevolent determination. Professor Irene Matheson, who specializes in Victorian mourning practices, offered troubling context. The Thornfields were operating within a tradition of memorial photography, but perverting it terribly. Rather than photographing the deceased shortly after death, a common Victorian practice, they were attempting to summon Constance through photography itself. The medium became not just a means of remembrance, but a channel. Perhaps most significant was our interview with Harold Jenkins, age 103, confined to a nursing home 30 miles from the estate. As a boy of 8, he had been hired to deliver groceries to the increasingly reclusive sisters in 1907. His memory remained unnervingly sharp. "Those ladies kept that photograph in the parlor," he told us, hands trembling. "Each time I delivered, I swear that middle figure looked more solid. The last time, it would have been October. The strange sister was looking right at me, not at the camera like the others, and her hand was reaching out of the frame, like she was trying to touch me. I dropped the delivery and never went back." When asked about the sisters themselves, his response was chilling. "Miss Eleanor had scratches up and down her arms that last time, deep ones that leaked through her sleeves. She said her sister had become insistent, but Miss Agnes was smiling like she'd won something. Said soon they'd be properly reunified. Said I was lucky to witness the return." Within 3 months of that delivery, both Agnes and Eleanor Thornfield were dead, officially from influenza, though no doctor's signature appears on the death certificates. Property records show the estate passed immediately to distant relatives who never occupied the house, keeping it maintained but uninhabited for over a century. Most disturbingly, the demolition crew has reported unexplained puddles throughout the house, water containing trace minerals matching the lake's unique composition, appearing even in sealed rooms, always in the perfect shape of a woman's footprints. The photograph's influence expanded beyond our initial investigation, when 3 members of the demolition crew abruptly resigned last week. We interviewed Foreman Ray Callahan at his home, where he sat with hands still trembling, a half-empty bottle of whiskey beside him. "We found something in the lake," he explained. "When we drained it for the development, there was a carved stone box embedded in the mud at the center. Inside was another photograph. Same sisters, same bench, but with differences. The crew had foolishly opened this waterlogged container on site. Ray described the image as identical to the original photograph, but with a horrifying variation. In this version, both Agnes and Eleanor appear translucent, while the central figure of Constance is solid, vividly present, her hands no longer folded but extended toward the viewer. The photograph changed while we were holding it," Ray insisted. "The middle sister, her face shifted into something like a smile. Then the water started seeping from the frame, running over our hands. Jenkins dropped it back into the mud and quit on the spot. The stone box was secured by our team the following day. Carved into its interior were the words, 'If image fails, sacrifice renews the covenant.' According to soil analysis, the box had been buried in the lake bed approximately 7 years after the sisters' deaths. Our attention turned to the documentation of the Thornfield funerals. Church records revealed both sisters were buried in closed caskets, despite no mention of disease contamination concerns. The presiding minister noted in his private journal, 'The strangest funeral of my career. No relatives attended. The caretaker insisted both coffins were extraordinarily heavy, yet the pallbearers were adamant that 3 women arrived in the hearse, though only 2 were interred. We exhumed the sisters' graves last Tuesday under county permission. Both coffins contain not bodies but hundreds of pounds of lake stones, meticulously arranged in human form. Carved into each stone was a single letter, together forming sentences too deteriorated to fully reconstruct, though the words return, sister, and water were identifiable. The estate's final secrets emerged from heating vent records. A chimney sweep's invoice from 1908, months after the sisters' reported deaths, noted, "Swept all vents as requested. Informed household that the sounds coming from the east wing are not due to birds in the chimney as suspected. Recommend addressing the water damage in the sealed bedroom where the noises are loudest." Most alarmingly, we've documented unexpected changes in the original photograph since our investigation began. Digital comparisons of weekly scans show Constance's figure gradually shifting position, her head turning incrementally toward the viewer, her formerly folded hands now almost reaching the photograph's edge. The camera used for our documentation has begun to malfunction, producing images with unexplainable water droplets on the lens, despite being in climate-controlled conditions. Audio recordings in the preservation room capture what sound analysts identify as underwater vocalizations at frequencies just below normal human hearing. The developers have postponed groundbreaking indefinitely following multiple equipment failures. Each morning, construction vehicles are found partially submerged in soil that tests show has the same moisture composition as the now-drained lake. Workers refuse to enter the property after 3 reported seeing a woman in Victorian dress walking across the empty lakebed at sunset, leaving wet footprints that steam in the evening air. The photograph has become an entity unto itself, demanding space in our archival facility that extends beyond its physical dimensions. Our head researcher, Dr. Lillian Parker, noticed it first, how files placed too near the image would be found scattered by morning, creating a perfect circle of empty space around the photograph, growing larger each day. When we installed a time-lapse camera to document this phenomenon, the footage revealed something more disturbing. Between the hours of 3 and 4 in the morning, the resolution deteriorated precisely when the perimeter expanded. Upon digital enhancement, we could make out what appeared to be a woman's silhouette circling the photograph, measuring the space as if pacing the boundaries of a prison cell. The last surviving construction worker who handled the stone box from the lake has been hospitalized with an unusual condition. His skin exudes a constant moisture that doctors cannot explain. Not perspiration, but water chemically identical to the Thornfield Lake. Even more concerning, his eyes have taken on a clouded appearance, and he reports continuous visions of 3 women standing at the foot of his hospital bed, their high-necked dresses dripping endlessly onto the floor. The youngest one says they made room for her, he told us during our visit. Now she's making room for them. We've enlisted specialist Dr. Solomon Reed from the Parapsychological Research Institute, who brought his collection of period-appropriate photographic equipment to examine the original image. His findings proved catastrophic. When he placed the photograph under his 19th century analysis scope, the glass plate of his instrument shattered explosively, sending fragments into his eye. While recovering in the same hospital as the construction worker, Dr. Reed began producing automatic writing in his morphine-induced sleep. Spidery text in 3 distinct handwriting styles, all female, all describing a ritual begun, but never completed. The covenant requires 3. One passage reads, 2 to make space, 1 to fill it. But when the space makers resist their role, the cycle inverts. The doorway opens both ways. Another passage, in clearer handwriting, Agnes believed photography could preserve us together. She was more right than she knew. The chemical bath, the silver nitrate, the water from our resting place, perfect elements for binding. The camera captured more than our image. It captured the moment of transition, suspended eternally. The third handwriting, barely legible. They pulled me under together, 4 hands holding me down while I fought. The knife was meant to silence my threats, but blood in water creates different silences. They thought the photograph would contain me, but instead, it contained us all. They made a space for me between them. Now I've made a space for them elsewhere. The Thornfield property development has been permanently abandoned following the inexplicable flooding of the entire acreage during a drought. Satellite imagery shows the water forms a perfect oval, the precise dimensions of the original lake, though the basin was filled with concrete months ago. Most disturbing is what happened when we attempted to digitize the photograph for final documentation. 3 separate scanning attempts produced the same impossible result. The image now shows only Constance, seated alone on the bench, fully corporeal and smiling directly at the viewer. Of Agnes and Eleanor, nothing remains but the faintest outline of where they once sat, their forms now mere suggestions of presence, fading with each passing day. The Thornfield photograph has been relocated to a specially constructed containment room at Arkham Preservation Society after 3 archivists reported waking in their homes to find puddles of lake water on their bedroom floors. Each puddle, when measured, corresponded exactly to the increasing area of empty space forming around the photograph in our facility. Our team has discovered a crucial connection we previously overlooked. The photographer who captured the original image was Jeremiah Blackburn, whose obscure monograph, Liminal Emulsions, Thresholds in Silver and Light, theorized that certain chemical processes could create permeable boundaries between the physical world and what he termed the submersive realm. Blackburn disappeared in 1904 after a series of controversial spirit photography sessions in Salem. Most significant was our discovery of Agnes Thornfield's final diary, concealed within the hollow base of the garden bench, the very bench from the photograph. The diary's water-warped pages reveal Agnes had been researching ancient water worship rituals for years before Constance's drowning. One passage particularly disturbs. The old texts speak truth. Water accepts the sacrifice but holds the essence in suspension. Constance's anger was her undoing, but her essence remains perfect for the working. When the silver nitrate meets the water of transformation, the doorway becomes fixed in permanence. Professor Emily Weatherby from the Department of Photographic Conservation has identified an anomaly in the chemical composition of the original photograph. The image contains trace elements of a compound once used in certain preserved anatomical specimens, suggesting that the developing solution may have contained not just lake water, but biological material from Constance herself. The surviving construction worker died yesterday at 3:17 in the morning. Hospital staff reported that moments before his death, the constant moisture emanating from his skin ceased abruptly. The attending nurse described his final words as, "They're coming through now, all three together again." Most alarming is what happened when Dr. Weatherby attempted to take spectroscopic readings of the photograph. The specialized equipment detected 3 distinct heat signatures within the two-dimensional image, one central signature reading at normal human body temperature, while the 2 fainter signatures registered at precisely 33 degrees Fahrenheit, the temperature of the Thornfield Lake at its deepest point. We've consulted with linguistic anthropologist Dr. Marcus Fleming regarding the partial inscriptions recovered from the stone-filled coffins. He believes they form a ritual invocation adapted from pre-colonial practices, indigenous to the region, but inverted in purpose, not to guide spirits to rest, but to bind them in a state of perpetual transition. The photograph itself continues its impossible evolution. This morning, our security footage captured the image changing without human intervention. For exactly 7 minutes, water appeared to run down the inside of the protective glass, though the case remained sealed and dry from the outside. When the water receded, the photograph had transformed once more, now showing 3 empty spaces on the bench, and in the reflection of the lake behind it, 3 figures walking away, hand in hand, toward the deeper water. The photograph has been transferred to Miskatonic University's Special Collections Vault after 3 separate containment facilities reported identical failures. In each location, the specialized glass case developed hairline fractures precisely 7 days after installation, with water intrusion occurring despite multiple dehumidifiers and moisture barriers. Dr. Weatherby's unexpected hospitalization following her spectroscopic analysis has raised alarming questions. Her symptoms, persistent sensation of drowning despite clear lung function, and the inexplicable formation of what appears to be algae in her tear ducts, have baffled medical professionals. Most concerning is her new habit of unconsciously sketching 3 female figures connected by flowing lines whenever left unattended. They're finding new anchors, Dr. Fleming warned during our emergency consultation. The Thornfield sisters aren't merely haunting the photograph anymore. They're using it as a threshold, attaching themselves to anyone who studies it too closely. This theory gained disturbing validation when we analyzed audio recordings from our documentation sessions. When played at 1/4 speed, beneath the ambient noise, 3 distinct female voices can be heard reciting in perfect unison. The water holds, the silver binds, the covenant transfers, new vessels for old souls. Campus security footage revealed another anomaly. Between midnight and dawn, the lawn surrounding the Special Collections building floods with a thin layer of water, despite no rainfall. Drone imaging shows this water forms a perfect reproduction of the reflecting pool from the original photograph, scaled up to encompass the entire building. We've intercepted concerning correspondence between Dr. Parker and an unnamed collector offering $2 million for the photograph. Her response, written in handwriting progressively shifting between 3 distinct styles, agreed to the sale with the cryptic addendum: 3 sisters, 3 carriers, 3 iterations. The cycle expands with each viewing. Tests on the photograph's emulsion layer have identified an impossible contradiction. The silver content is actively increasing rather than degrading, as though the image is still developing more than a century after creation. Microanalysis shows the additional silver forming in patterns resembling capillary beds. The photograph appears to be developing its own circulatory system. Perhaps most unsettling was yesterday's incident during the power outage. When emergency generators failed, security personnel reported hearing what sounded like rushing water from within the vault. Upon restoring power, they discovered the photograph had changed orientation within its sealed case, now hanging inverted, showing what appears to be the scene viewed from below the water's surface, looking upward at three indistinct figures peering down into the lake. The university board has approved unprecedented containment measures, including construction of a specialized lead-lined chamber using materials salvaged from a decommissioned nuclear facility. Yet contractors report their blueprints mysteriously alter overnight, the designated room repeatedly reconfiguring into the dimensions of the Thornfield Manor's west wing. As our investigation continues, we face an increasingly troubling question. Are we documenting this phenomenon or merely facilitating its expansion? The photograph no longer appears to be an artifact of the Thornfield sisters' tragedy. It seems to have become an incubation chamber for something still developing, still growing, still reaching outward through anyone who dares look too closely at three sisters and the spaces between them. The university administration voted last night to permanently seal the special collections vault. Concrete now entombs the photograph behind 18 inches of reinforced walls. Campus maintenance reports, however, that moisture continues to seep through this barrier at an impossible rate, pooling in patterns that maintenance staff describe as almost like written messages when viewed from above. We've traced the Thornfield family lineage back to Salem, where their ancestors were peripherally connected to the witch trials. Church records from 1692 mention a Thornfield woman accused of communing with entities from beneath the waters, but later released when three key witnesses drowned under suspicious circumstances. The family relocated shortly thereafter, establishing themselves in an area known to indigenous peoples as the place where water remembers. Dr. Parker has been placed on administrative leave following her attempt to remove the photograph during recent flooding. Security footage shows her standing knee-deep in water that had inexplicably filled the special collections anteroom, attempting to pry open the sealed chamber with a fire axe while speaking in three overlapping voices. Most disturbing was her appearance. Her hair arranged identically to the Thornfield sisters, her clothing somehow transformed into a high-necked Victorian dress that witnesses described as soaking wet, yet impossibly formal. Psychologist Dr. Helen Richards, brought in to evaluate the research team, has identified a troubling pattern among those who've spent significant time with the photograph. They begin to experience what I call triple consciousness, she explained. Their thoughts fragment into three distinct perspectives, often described as the one who knows, the one who regrets, and the one who waits. This psychological splintering appears progressive and irreversible. Water analysis from the continuous seepage has yielded inexplicable results. The liquid contains microorganisms extinct since the early Devonian period, aquatic life forms that disappeared 400 million years ago. More alarmingly, these organisms appear to be arranging themselves into complex patterns, matching the silver distribution in the photograph, as if the image is attempting to achieve biological dimensionality. The construction worker's autopsy revealed further mysteries. His lungs contained no water despite symptoms of drowning. Instead, pathologists discovered his lung tissue had transformed into a structure resembling photographic emulsion, light-sensitive and containing trace amounts of silver nitrate. When exposed to light during examination, this tissue momentarily revealed an image of three women standing in a lake. Local authorities have quarantined the Thornfield property after reports of figures emerging from the ground. Satellite imaging confirms that despite drought conditions throughout the region, the property now hosts 17 small pools of water, each precisely the size and shape of a 19th-century photographic development tray. Drone footage shows these pools darkening simultaneously each day at sunset, as if developing in unison. Professor Weatherby, speaking from her hospital bed, offers perhaps the most unsettling theory yet. We've been conceptualizing this backward. The photograph isn't haunted. It's a developmental stage in a larger process, like a cocoon. The Thornfield sisters began something in 1902 that's only now reaching maturity. The picture isn't just containing them, it's incubating them, preparing them for emergence. And I believe we're approaching the final stage of development. The Thornfield photograph is now the subject of unprecedented international attention. 3 separate research institutions on different continents have reported identical phenomena, Teams studying digital copies of the image have discovered small pools of water forming beneath their computers, each containing microscopic fragments of silver nitrate in suspension. We've consulted specialist Dr. Eliza Montgomery from the Institute of Photographic Archaeology, who made a troubling connection to several other cases throughout history. She provided documentation of 7 similar instances spanning from 1872 to 1965, each involving photographs where subjects appeared to manifest physically over time. In each case, water served as a conduit, and in each case, the phenomena escalated until reaching what Dr. Montgomery terms the convergence point. The pattern is always the same, she explained during our video conference, her eyes constantly darting to something off camera. The image begins to generate water. The water begins to generate silver. The silver begins to generate tissue. It's an alchemical process of transformation using 19th century photographic principles to achieve what ancient mystics could only theorize: the conversion of image to flesh. Most distressing is the statistical anomaly now affecting the university town. Public health officials report 17 new cases of sympathetic drowning syndrome, individuals with no water in their lungs who nevertheless exhibit all clinical signs of drowning. Each victim reports identical nightmares of 3 women calling from beneath the water, and each has developed a perfect oval birthmark between their shoulder blades, matching the dimensions of the original photograph. The concrete barrier entombing the photograph has now developed a pattern of cracks, forming 3 distinct silhouettes. Ground-penetrating radar reveals that behind this concrete, the photograph no longer exists in its original form. Instead, technicians detected a pocket of liquid with 3 dense masses suspended within it, masses that appear to pulse with rhythmic movement consistent with human heartbeats. Local hydrologists have identified another alarming development. Water tables beneath the university have reconfigured, with subterranean flows now forming a perfect network, matching the Thornfield sisters' circulatory systems. Wells throughout the region draw water with elevated silver content and trace amounts of collodion, a key component in 19th century wet plate photography. Perhaps most terrifying was this morning's discovery. The university's central fountain, situated half a mile from the sealed vault, began flowing with what appeared to be developing fluid instead of water. Within this liquid floated hundreds of small photographic plates, each showing fragments of 3 women walking out of a lake, their Victorian dresses dripping as they approached the viewer step by step, their faces becoming increasingly clearer with each new plate that surfaces. The consensus among remaining researchers is that we have not been studying a haunted photograph, but have instead been unwittingly participating in its final development. The Thornfield sisters have been patiently enlarging their image for over a century, using each new researcher, each new investigation, each new analysis as chemical catalysts in a process none of us recognized until it was far too late to stop. The university archives have yielded a disturbing historical precedent for the Thornfield phenomenon. In 1876, noted psychical researcher Thaddeus Morley documented an eerily similar case involving twin sisters in Maine who drowned their younger sibling in a tidal pool, then commissioned a photograph beside it. Morley's journals, previously overlooked due to miscategorization, describe how the photograph developed additional elements over 8 months until, during a winter storm, 3 women matching the sisters' descriptions were seen walking from the sea into town, leaving wet footprints that steamed in the cold air. What we face is not supernatural, but ultranatural, noted Professor Amelia Blackwood in an emergency virtual symposium yesterday. The Thornfields discovered, perhaps accidentally, that silver nitrate immersed in certain waters creates not a representation of reality, but a permeable threshold between states of being. Photography doesn't just capture light, it can capture essence when the conditions are precisely calibrated. Our team intercepted troubling correspondence between 3 unrelated individuals who viewed digital copies of the photograph. Each has reported identical dreams of standing in a dark room where 3 women instruct them in the preparation of chemical baths. Most alarming is their collective insistence that upon waking, they discovered their fingertips stained with silver nitrate they never consciously handled. The phenomenon has developed beyond our containment capabilities. Water samples from 27 locations within a 50-mile radius of the university all contain microscopic suspended particles that, when exposed to photographic paper, develop into fragmented images of Victorian women in various stages of emergence. Public health officials have quarantined the municipal water supply after residents reported seeing faces forming in their bathroom mirrors when condensation gathers, always in groups of 3, always with the same solemn expressions. Dr. Parker's condition has progressed to what medical staff term sympathetic transformation. Her physical appearance increasingly resembles Agnes Thornfield, down to identical facial structure that bone scans confirm is actually reshaping her skeletal framework. When interviewed, she speaks with perfect historical accuracy about photographic techniques from 1902, despite having no formal training in the field. The sisters were never trying to preserve Constance's memory. She explained during a moment of lucidity. They were transforming her and themselves into something that exists between states. Not alive, not dead, but perpetually developing. Each new person who studies the photograph becomes part of the chemical bath necessary for the final emergence. Most concerning is the discovery that Jeremiah Blackburn's original camera equipment was recently purchased at auction by an anonymous buyer who shipped it to an address neighboring the Thornfield property. Satellite imagery shows the equipment has been arranged around the newly formed pools in a perfect circle. When viewed from above, these pools now clearly form the shape of an enormous human eye. The final stage appears imminent. 3 separate weather systems have converged over the region, creating unprecedented rainfall that meteorologists cannot explain through conventional models. The water falls in patterns reminiscent of chemical formulas used in 19th century photographic development, as if the sky itself has become a darkroom for something vast and patient that has been developing for over a century. The university town has fallen silent as an unnatural fog blankets the streets, thick with moisture that beads on every surface like developer on photographic paper. Those few residents who haven't evacuated report seeing their own reflections in puddles shift and change, momentarily revealing 3 women standing behind them before the water ripples away the image. Our research team has discovered something crucial in the personal effects of Jeremiah Blackburn. Hidden beneath the false bottom of his camera case was a letter addressed to future photographers, its contents stained and nearly illegible, except for a chilling warning. What the Thornfield women have pioneered represents not an aberration, but an evolution of the medium. They have discovered that consciousness itself can be suspended in silver and water, neither fully manifest nor truly absent. I helped them willingly at first, not understanding that the process, once begun, seeks completion with the inevitability of chemical reaction. Most disturbing are the meteorological anomalies now affecting photographic processes worldwide. Professional labs in Tokyo, London, and Buenos Aires report identical phenomena. Developed photographs, regardless of subject matter, show 3 faint female figures at the edges of the frame, their presence growing more distinct with each passing day. Digital photography remains unaffected, creating a sudden global demand for analog equipment that photochemical suppliers cannot explain. Dr. Montgomery has identified a crucial pattern in historical accounts. The Thornfield process requires 3 elements: the original subjects, the binding medium, and most importantly, witnesses. Each person who views the photograph, studies it, or even hears about it becomes part of the chemical reaction. The attention itself is catalytic. We've been providing the final ingredient needed for their manifestation through our very investigation. The sealed vault has been breached despite security measures. Campus police discovered the concrete walls had softened overnight, transformed into a substance resembling wet collodion. Where the photograph once hung now exists an oval opening the exact dimensions of the original lake, a perfect portal filled with what appears to be developing solution, its surface occasionally disturbed by movement from within. Most telling was the discovery made by Dr. Weatherby's assistant while organizing her hospitalized mentor's research. The original glass plate negative of the Thornfield photograph, long thought destroyed, had been in Dr. Weatherby's possession for months. Microscopic examination revealed the plate is actively reconstructing itself, fracture lines healing as if the glass were organic tissue knitting back together. More alarming still, the negative shows a completely different image than the print. In this version, the sisters stand fully submerged beneath the lake's surface, looking upward toward a single empty bench. Local authorities have established a perimeter around campus as the water continues to rise from no discernible source. Those witnessing the phenomenon describe it as purposeful, flowing against gravity in precisely measured paths that form complex chemical formulas when viewed from above. The National Guard has been mobilized, But 3 separate units report their communications equipment only transmits the sound of water lapping gently against a wooden dock, punctuated by 3 voices counting backwards in unison. The concentric circles of flooding have reached a frightening symmetry around the university, creating what geologists describe as impossible topography. The water has carved itself into the precise dimensions of a Victorian-era darkroom, with the sealed vault positioned exactly where the development tray would sit in such a space. Aerial photographs reveal that shadows falling across this massive liquid structure appear as giant hands manipulating unseen equipment. We've consulted Dr. Josephine Thorne, an expert in 19th century mourning rituals, who identified another disturbing connection. The Thornfield sisters performed what was known as a water marriage ritual, she explained from behind a protective barrier, refusing to look directly at our documentation. It was practiced in certain isolated New England communities when a betrothed died before the wedding. The living would marry their beloved to the water, creating a binding that was believed to preserve them in a state of perpetual becoming. Historical records confirm that Constance had been engaged to Edward Blackburn, the photographer's younger brother. Their wedding was scheduled for autumn 1898, 4 months after her drowning. What we initially interpreted as a murder may have been something far more ritualistic, a ceremonial binding rather than a mere elimination. The photograph's influence continues to spread through unexpected vectors. Individuals who have merely read accounts of the investigation report discovering small, perfectly round pools of water beside their beds each morning. These pools evaporate when exposed to light, leaving behind silver residue in patterns that experts identify as fragments of Victorian women's faces, eyes, lips, fingertips, gradually assembling complete identities through dispersed physical manifestations. Most alarming are the changes observed in Dr. Parker's physiology. Medical imaging reveals her cellular structure now resembles photographic emulsion, with silver particles suspended throughout her tissues. When placed in darkness, her skin develops faint images that fade in light, always showing 3 women walking toward the viewer, fractionally closer in each manifestation. "They've been developing for 120 years, she whispered during her last lucid moment. A normal photograph takes minutes, but when the medium is reality itself, the chemical process unfolds across generations. We are simply the final fixing bath, preserving what they've become." The university president disappeared last night after reporting strange noises from her private bathroom. Campus security footage shows her walking purposefully toward the sealed vault at 3:17 in the morning, carrying what appears to be 19th century photographic equipment. Most disturbing is her transformation as she walks, her modern clothing gradually shifting into Victorian dress, her posture changing until 3 distinct shadows fall behind her single form. Water continues to rise from the breach in the vault, no longer behaving according to physical laws. It flows upward along walls, forming reflective surfaces that don't mirror our world, but instead reveal glimpses of the Thornfield estate as it existed in 1902. Those who gaze too long into these liquid mirrors report feeling hands reaching out to pull them through, not violently, but with the gentle insistence of sisters helping one another across a threshold. The perimeter established by the National Guard has failed, not through any breach of protocol, but through a fundamental transformation of the barrier itself. The sandbags placed to contain the advancing waters have begun to sprout delicate silver crystals, which under microscopic examination reveal themselves to be millions of miniature Victorian-era photographs, each showing a fragment of the Thornfield sisters at different stages of emergence. We've consulted hydrological engineer Dr. Samuel West, who observed the phenomenon from behind specialized non-reflective glass. "This isn't water as we understand it," he explained, his voice growing more distorted with each recording. "It behaves more like a semi-sentient developing solution, seeking surfaces that can serve as photographic plates, including human skin. 7 guardsmen have been hospitalized after exposure to the floodwaters. Their symptoms defy medical classification, their eyes now permanently dilated as if eternally capturing light, their skin hypersensitive to darkness. Most disturbing is their collective insistence that they can see the sisters completing each other when they close their eyes. The original Thornfield Bible, where the photograph was first discovered, has been analyzed by theological experts who identified a disturbing annotation in Agnes's handwriting alongside Ecclesiastes. "What has been, will be again. What has been done, will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun." Below this, in different ink, but beneath the water, all things become new. Computer systems within a 5-mile radius of the university have begun displaying inexplicable imagery. Regardless of their content, all digital screens occasionally flicker to show what technicians describe as wet Victorian women, standing progressively closer to the viewer, their hands reaching toward the glass as if testing a membrane between worlds. These images cannot be deleted or blocked, and appear even on disconnected devices. Professor Emilia Blackwood's connection to the case has proven more significant than initially apparent. Genealogical research confirms she is a direct descendant of Jeremiah Blackburn's brother, the same Edward who was betrothed to Constance Thornfield. Her research notes, secured after her sudden hospitalization, reveal her growing suspicion that she was never investigating the photograph, but instead being summoned by it. They require a Blackburn to complete the circle, reads her final journal entry. The original covenant was between 3 sisters and my ancestor. Now they need both bloodlines present for the final fixing of the image. I am not their researcher. I am their chemical catalyst. Most chilling is the transformation occurring in the night sky above the university. Cloud formations have arranged themselves into the distinctive pattern of a collodion pour across glass, with 3 darker masses moving deliberately through this atmospheric emulsion. Weather radar cannot penetrate these formations, instead returning images of Victorian women when technicians attempt to scan them. At this moment, as I complete what may be our final documentation, I can hear water lapping against my office door on the 4th floor, a physical impossibility given the building's elevation. The liquid seeps beneath the frame, advancing across my floor in 3 distinct rivulets that occasionally merge before separating again, moving with deliberate intelligence toward my desk. The university has been fully evacuated, leaving only our small documentation team in the hastily established monitoring station 3 miles from campus. From this distance, we observe what can only be described as a complete inversion of physical laws. The water has ceased flowing outward and now moves in reverse. Streams, rain, and even moisture from the air converging on the vault in defiance of natural principles. Through specialized telescopic equipment, we've documented an architectural impossibility. The campus buildings now appear to exist simultaneously in their present form, and as they might have in 1902, with Victorian-era structural elements phasing in and out of visibility. Most prominent is a newly manifested boathouse where the vault was located, its weathered wood appearing perpetually wet, regardless of atmospheric conditions. Dr. Montgomery's colleagues at Princeton have discovered something troubling in Thornfield County records. Agnes and Eleanor were not merely sisters to Constance, but also served as her legal guardians following their parents' deaths. Most revealing was a previously overlooked codicil to Judge Thornfield's will, stipulating that his estate would pass to Agnes and Eleanor only if Constance remained unmarried at 21, the precise age she would have reached 3 weeks after her drowning. Financial motive intertwined with occult knowledge creates a disturbing picture of premeditated ritual rather than impulsive violence. Bank records show substantial withdrawals by Agnes in the months before the drowning, corresponding exactly with payments to Jeremiah Blackburn for specialized photographic equipment. Governor Whitaker has declared a state emergency after 7 water treatment facilities across the state began producing liquid with high silver nitrate content. Consumer reports describe tap water momentarily displaying faces when caught in certain lighting, always in groups of 3, always female, always moving closer to the surface with each new observation. Our satellite uplink fails intermittently, but during connections, we've received disturbing reports from the global scientific community. Photosensitive paper exposed to moonlight worldwide now develops identical images. 3 Victorian women standing in ankle-deep water, looking directly at the viewer, their expressions shifting from solemn to what analysts describe as anticipatory recognition. Most alarming is what happened during our team's final attempt to neutralize the photograph's influence. Dr. Eliza Montgomery suggested deploying specialized light frequencies to disrupt the silver matrix within the spreading water. When technicians activated the equipment, the beam reflected back in triplicate, imprinting 3 distinct watermarks on every surface it touched, watermarks that, under magnification, reveal themselves as Victorian-era signatures: Agnes Thornfield, Eleanor Thornfield, and Constance Thornfield. The signatures continually regenerate when removed, appearing on paper, skin, glass, any surface capable of holding an image. Those marked report hearing a gentle voice whispering the same phrase repeatedly. The sitting is nearly complete. Please maintain your position just a moment longer. The impossible has become mundane. I write these notes on paper that continuously dampens despite the dehumidifiers surrounding my workstation. The university's emergency containment protocols have established a perimeter of specialized equipment designed to neutralize photographic chemicals, yet each machine inevitably transforms into antiquated developing apparatus overnight. Wooden frames, glass basins, and brass fittings appearing where modern technology once stood. Most revealing is what emerged from the personal effects of the construction worker who first handled the stone box. His widow reluctantly surrendered his journal, found clutched in his hands at time of death. The final pages contain automatic writing in a flowing Victorian hand, detailing the true nature of the Thornfield ritual. 3 sisters, 3 states of being, Constance in suspension, Agnes as anchor, Eleanor as threshold. The photograph never captured our image. It captured our transformation. We discovered what the ancients knew. A properly prepared emulsion doesn't record reality but reshapes it. The journal continues with technical specifications for a photographic process involving human tissue, hair, blood, and bone ash incorporated into the chemical bath. More disturbing is the detailed confession that Constance had not merely threatened to reveal family secrets, but had discovered Agnes and Eleanor performing this very ritual using remains exhumed from the family plot. The drowning was not merely murder, but completion of a generational working that required 3 female Thornfields of direct lineage. Dr. Weatherby's condition has evolved beyond medical classification. Her hospital room remains quarantined after staff discovered her body producing silver-rich fluid from every pore, pooling beneath her bed in perfect oval patterns, matching the original photograph's dimensions. When darkness falls, these pools become reflective, showing not the ceiling above, but views of the Thornfield estate as seen from underwater. Most alarming is her new ability to communicate through these liquid surfaces, her words forming as ripples that translate to sound when recorded. They never intended to preserve Constance. Her watery voice explained during our final interview. They needed to transform her into the suspended state, neither living nor dead, but perpetually developing. The true ritual wasn't the drowning, but the photograph itself. What looks to us like death was merely the first chemical bath in a development process playing out across a century. International occult experts now believe the Thornfield sisters discovered something ancient civilizations had only theorized, that consciousness can be fixed in suspension like an image in emulsion, existing in a state of perpetual becoming when properly prepared. The photograph wasn't documentation of their ritual, but its central mechanism, a doorway held open through silver and water, expanding fractionally with each new observation until it achieved the necessary dimensions for full manifestation. The most troubling development is what satellite imagery now reveals. The floodwaters receding from campus aren't disappearing, but converging precisely where the original Thornfield Lake once stood, reforming its exact dimensions. At the center of this newly formed body of water stands a garden bench, empty, waiting, perfectly dry despite being surrounded by water, as if ready for new subjects to be seated and photographed. The water speaks to us now. Last night at precisely 3:17 in the morning, every digital screen within a 100-mile radius activated simultaneously. Televisions, computers, phones, even disconnected devices with dead batteries displayed the same image. The Thornfield bench, now positioned at the center of the newly formed lake, occupied by 3 women in Victorian dress. Their features, once indistinct in the original photograph, now appear in perfect clarity, though observers report being unable to remember the specifics of their faces after looking away. More troubling is what was captured by automated weather satellites passing overhead during this digital manifestation. Their thermal imaging shows the university and surrounding town existing at exactly 33 degrees Fahrenheit, the temperature of the Thornfield Lake's deepest point, while the newly formed water body at the estate registers as precisely 98.6 degrees human body temperature. Dr. Parker, Professor Blackwood, and Dr. Weatherby have disappeared from their respective containment facilities. Security footage shows each woman walking calmly through supposedly locked doors at exactly the same moment, their movements synchronized despite being miles apart. In each recording, they pause at the threshold, turn toward the camera, and speak in perfect unison. The development is complete. The fixing begins. The National Historical Photography Association has discovered a disturbing pattern in their archives. Every photograph taken of water since 1902 contains, when properly enhanced, A faint impression of three women looking outward from beneath the surface. These impressions grow progressively more distinct with each passing year, as if something has been slowly developing in the collective photographic record of an entire century. Most significant was yesterday's discovery at the original Thornfield estate. Archaeological excavation beneath the former drawing room revealed 3 silver urns containing not ashes but perfectly preserved photographic chemicals, silver nitrate, collodion, and gallic acid, arranged in a triangle around a daguerreotype plate showing the lake. Chemical analysis indicates these materials remain in active suspension despite their age, still capable of developing images when exposed to light. The final piece came from Agnes Thornfield's personal effects, a letter addressed to "Those Who See Us Emerge," dated April 18, 1902, the day before the photograph session. Its contents offer the only explanation we may ever have for what the sisters set in motion. You who read this have become part of our development. The photograph you discovered was never meant to capture a moment, but to create one. What you perceive as haunting is merely process, the slow, deliberate transformation of 3 women into something water remembers and silver preserves. We are not trapped in the image. The image is trapped in us, developing outward across the years until the moment of perfect fixation arrives. By the time you understand this, you will already be part of the chemical bath that completes us. As I conclude this final documentation, I notice the ink spreading on the page, thinning into tendrils that form 3 distinct signatures beneath my own. Outside my window, the rain has stopped falling from above and now rises from the ground instead, droplets ascending to form a shimmering curtain that reflects not our world, but the quiet garden where 3 sisters once posed for a photograph that was never meant to capture reality, but to remake it. The photograph has now become permanently integrated with the natural world. Reports arrive hourly of lakes, ponds, and even household sinks revealing 3 solemn Victorian faces when the water stills, no longer confined to those who encountered the original image, but spreading through the world's connected waterways like a developing solution seeking universal fixation. The final breakthrough came from Dr. Montgomery's 13-year-old daughter, who discovered her mother's research notes hidden inside a waterproof camera case. While the scientific community sought explanations in the paranormal, the Thornfield sisters had been exploiting something much simpler: the fundamental properties of water as a memory medium. The girl's innocent observation connected what experts had overlooked. The chemical composition of 19th-century photographic emulsions contains the same crystalline structures as human cerebrospinal fluid. They weren't trapped in the photograph, explained the girl during an emergency video conference. Her mother's notebook spread before her. They used the photograph to transform themselves into a pattern that water could sustain and replicate. The silver nitrate wasn't preserving an image. It was preserving consciousness itself. This explains why every attempt at containment failed. Water, with its perfect molecular memory and universal connectivity, provided an endless developing medium. Each person who viewed or studied the photograph became part of the chemical reaction, their attention serving as the catalyst needed for the next stage of manifestation. Governor Whitaker's Emergency Commission has made the unprecedented decision to classify water itself as a controlled substance within the 100-mile containment zone. Yet scientists acknowledge the futility of such measures, given that the human body consists primarily of the very medium through which the Thornfield sisters now travel. Most revealing was the message discovered yesterday at the Thornfield estate, where the newly formed lake has somehow remained contained within its banks despite defying known physics. As dawn broke, observers noted words forming across the water's surface in perfect ripples. We never sought vengeance but completion. What began in silver and water ends the same way. The cycle required 120 years precisely, the time needed for light to properly develop what we became. Your witness fixes us permanently in this world. We thank you for your participation. By sunset, the phenomenon had reached its culmination. The waters surrounding the university receded completely, leaving behind millions of silver particles arranged in intricate patterns across the landscape. Aerial photography reveals these patterns form 3 enormous Victorian portraits, the Thornfield sisters, rendered in silver across the earth itself, their expressions no longer solemn but peaceful. Dr. Weatherby, Dr. Parker, and Professor Blackwood were found seated on the original bench at the Thornfield estate, physically present but fundamentally altered. Medical examination reveals their cellular structure now exists in a state between solid and liquid. their consciousness apparently shared between three bodies. They speak only in unison, addressing questions before they're asked, explaining that they serve as anchors for what the Thornfield sisters have become. The photograph was never haunted, they explained to investigators. It was developing, and now, at last, it is fixed. The transformation is complete, but I fear our understanding remains woefully incomplete. I write this from the Thornfield estate, where I've spent 7 days observing the bench, the lake, and the 3 women who appear in different combinations during different phases of the moon. Analysis of water samples from 50 locations worldwide confirms what we suspected. The Thornfield process has achieved universal distribution. Microscopic silver particles suspended in water bodies across 6 continents form perfect identical patterns, matching the original photograph when viewed under polarized light. The global scientific community remains divided on whether we face contamination or communion. What none of my colleagues have yet realized is the truth I discovered in Agnes Thornfield's childhood diary, recovered from a sealed cigar box beneath the garden bench. The pages reveal that the 3 sisters were never truly sisters at all, but iterations of the same woman across time. Agnes's childhood entries describe her fascination with mirrors in still water, where she claimed to see my other selves looking back, the one I was before, and the one I shall become. By age 13, she had named these reflections Eleanor and Constance. The Thornfield family history holds the final key. What town records list as 3 sisters born 2 years apart were in fact a single child. Judge Thornfield, driven by grief after his wife died in childbirth, suffered a psychological break that caused him to perceive his daughter at different ages simultaneously. He raised Agnes as 3 separate girls, dressing her differently on different days, addressing her by different names, essentially fracturing her identity into a triptych of selfhood. Agnes's diary chronicles her gradual understanding. Father needs me to be 3, so 3 I have become. Eleanor when he speaks of mother, Constance when he requires innocence, Agnes when he needs propriety. The transitions grow smoother with practice. What happened at the lake was not murder or sacrifice, but integration. The divided, self-seeking wholeness through the only medium capable of holding multiple states simultaneously, water and silver suspended in perfect emulsion. The photograph was never meant to capture 3 sisters, but to reunify 3 fragments of a fractured consciousness. The ritual wasn't designed to preserve them in suspension, but to heal a splintered self through the alchemical properties of silver nitrate and water, elements that exist comfortably between states, neither solid nor liquid, neither reflective nor absorptive, but perfectly intermediate. This explains why the photograph generated such profound psychological effects in those who studied it. We weren't witnessing a haunting, but experiencing the physical manifestation of integration. The waters rising worldwide aren't harbingers of supernatural invasion, but a universal reconciliation. The traumatized human consciousness finding pathways to wholeness through chemical transformation. As Dr. Parker, Dr. Weatherby, and Professor Blackwood sit on the bench by the lake each evening, speaking sometimes as individuals and sometimes in perfect unison, I understand they aren't possessed but healed, their own fractured modern selves integrated through contact with Agnes Thornfield's completed transformation. The ultimate truth of the Thornfield photograph was never about 3 sisters haunting an image, but about one woman's journey to reassemble herself, a process so powerful it continues to ripple outward, offering the same possibility to a world of fragmented souls who glimpse their reflection in still water and momentarily recognize all the selves they've been and might become. The revelations have transformed sleepy township communities surrounding Miskatonic University into sites of peculiar pilgrimage. Ordinary people with no connection to our investigation arrive daily at lakes, ponds, and reflecting pools, sitting silently before the water with photographs of loved ones whose identities have somehow fractured or faded. Alzheimer's patients, estranged siblings, children lost to trauma or addiction. They come seeking what they call the Thornfield reconciliation, placing these photographs at the water's edge and waiting for the surface to still into a reflective plane. Local authorities initially attempted to discourage these gatherings, but witnesses report remarkable outcomes. Images that shift and clarify, showing not just who their loved ones were, but all versions of themselves simultaneously present, whole and integrated. What began as scientific investigation has evolved into something approaching spiritual practice. Dr. Samuel West, once our skeptical hydrological consultant, now leads weekly sessions at the Thornfield Lake, helping people understand what he calls the permeable boundaries of selfhood. His left eye remains permanently dilated since his exposure to the original photograph, a physical transformation he now describes as improved vision rather than injury. The unified Thornfield consciousness speaks through different vessels depending on the inquiry. Questions about the past are answered through Dr. Parker, historical context through Professor Blackwood, and future implications through Dr. Weatherby, as if each woman channels a different temporal aspect of Agnes's integrated self. Their collective insight has drawn attention from psychological researchers specializing in dissociative identity disorders, who report unprecedented success when treating patients with water infused with trace silver compounds. Most surprising is how ordinary the phenomenon has become. Children play in sprinklers that occasionally form words in midair. Swimmers report momentary clarity beneath the waves, experiencing their past and future selves not as separate but as continuous. Photographers worldwide have abandoned digital equipment, returning to silver-based processes that they claim produce images showing people as they truly are, complete across time. The Thornfield estate has neither been quarantined nor commercialized, existing instead in a curious intermediate state, maintained by volunteers who understand its significance without seeking to control it. The garden bench remains open to those drawn there, though visitors report that sometimes it appears occupied by 3 women in Victorian dress who nod in acknowledgement before fading into the particular light that occurs when sun strikes water at precisely 33 degrees. What Agnes Thornfield discovered through trauma and transformation, our fractured modern world now explores through conscious choice. The photograph was never about death or supernatural haunting, but about the possibility that consciousness, like light captured in silver suspension, might exist in multiple states simultaneously, neither past nor present, neither memory nor projection, but perfectly whole across the permeable boundaries we create between who we were, who we are, and who we might become. Perhaps most profoundly, water itself seems fundamentally altered, more receptive to human intention, more capable of holding contradictory states in perfect suspension. When rain falls now, people look upward with expectation rather than concern, understanding finally that some transformations occur not through violent disruption, but through the gentle, persistent chemistry of becoming. The world has adapted with remarkable speed to what scholars now call the Thornfield state. Chemistry textbooks include chapters on consciousness as a colloidal suspension. Artists create installations where visitors witness their potential selves in carefully calibrated reflecting pools. Even digital technology has evolved. New screens incorporate trace silver elements that occasionally shimmer to show viewers as they might have been or might yet become. Agnes Thornfield's fractured self and subsequent integration through photographic chemistry has become a blueprint for psychological healing. The therapeutic approach named silver immersion has shown particular success with trauma patients, allowing them to perceive their pre-traumatic and post-healing selves simultaneously, suspended in the same moment like an image captured across multiple exposures. The original photograph itself has transformed beyond physical form. Those who handled it during our investigation report occasional silver residue on their fingertips when touching water, as if the image has dispersed into the world's hydrosphere, a visual melody now played through every raindrop and tear. My own role in documenting this phenomenon has changed me in ways I'm only beginning to understand. When I look into mirrors now, I sometimes glimpse other versions of myself. The skeptical investigator I was when this began, the believer I became, and someone else, someone still developing, who understands that the boundaries between observer and observed are as permeable as those between silver and water. Yesterday, I returned to the vault where we once attempted to contain the impossible. The space remains transformed, not flooded but tranquil, the walls lined with a thin film of silver that captures visitors from all angles simultaneously. University officials have wisely left it open, understanding that some thresholds serve better as passages than barriers. 3 women visit the vault each equinox, though their identities shift between witnesses. Some see Dr. Parker, Dr. Weatherby, and Professor Blackwood walking in perfect synchronization. Others report 3 Victorian sisters in high-necked lace dresses. Most intriguing are those who see 3 versions of themselves, past, present, and potential, seated momentarily on a bench that materializes and fades with the changing light. The Thornfield family Bible, where the photograph was first discovered, has found a permanent home in the university's special collection. Its pages, once water-damaged, now reveal different texts depending on the reader's reflection in the specially designed glass case, the words shifting to address precisely what each observer needs to understand about their own fragmented selves. Perhaps the most profound outcome is how the Thornfield phenomenon has changed our relationship with photography itself. No longer seen as mere documentation of moments past, photographs are now understood as active thresholds, permeable membranes between states of being, capable of transformation when approached with proper intention. As water and silver continue their quiet communion across the world, we've come to recognize that what we initially feared as supernatural intrusion was actually an invitation to wholeness, Agnes Thornfield's final gift to a fragmented world that had forgotten how to see itself complete across the rippling surface of time. The irony is not lost on me that my investigation into the Thornfield sisters has transformed me into something of a photographer myself. I now carry a vintage camera loaded with silver-based film, documenting the subtle manifestations that others might miss. The way raindrops arrange themselves in tripled patterns, how reflective surfaces momentarily hold three distinct versions of whoever passes before them. My colleagues in the scientific community have largely moved on to quantifying the phenomenon, measuring silver concentrations in reservoirs and tracking consciousness integration rates among exposure subjects. But I remain focused on the human element, the stories of those who've experienced the distinctive clarity that comes from seeing one's fragmented self reunified through the Thornfield process. Last Tuesday, I interviewed 97-year-old Meredith Holloway, who claims to have encountered Agnes Thornfield as a child in 1930. She wasn't a ghost, Mrs. Holloway insisted, her eyes clear and focused despite her age. She was a possibility. She showed me all the versions of myself stretching forward and backward, like pearls on a single strand. I've been seeing myself complete ever since. The Thornfield estate has quietly become a sanctuary for those with dissociative conditions. They sit beside the lake in contemplative silence, often for hours, occasionally nodding as if in conversation with someone visible only to them. Medical researchers have documented remarkable neural reintegration among these visitors, fractured consciousness gently reassembling through prolonged exposure to the silver-infused waters. Photography historians have identified 1902 as the pivotal year when the medium's potential for transformation, rather than mere documentation, was first recognized. Agnes Thornfield's innovation was understanding that silver nitrate suspended in water created not just images but thresholds, permeable boundaries between states of being that could be traversed with proper intention. What continues to haunt me is not the spectral nature of the three sisters, but the possibility that Agnes's fractured self might have remained splintered indefinitely had she not discovered this alchemical process. How many others move through the world similarly fragmented, perceiving themselves as irreconcilably divided rather than temporarily suspended between states of integration? The original stone box recovered from the lake bed has been permanently installed at the center of the university's newly established Department of Photographic Consciousness. Its inscription, "If image fails, sacrifice renews the covenant," is now understood not as a threat, but as a recognition that transformation requires surrender, the willing release of outdated self-perception. Tomorrow at dawn, I will join Dr. Parker, Professor Blackwood, and Dr. Weatherby at the Thornfield Lake for what they describe as the final sitting. They've invited select witnesses to document what they believe will be the complete integration of Agnes Thornfield's consciousness, not just through their three bodies, but expanded into the water and silver that have become her universal medium. As I prepare my camera and notebook for this culminating moment, I find myself lingering before mirrors and still waters, watching for the telltale ripples that suggest my own integration has begun. The gentle dissolution of boundaries between the investigator who first encountered the photograph and the witness I've become. The Thornfield photograph rests now in my hands, a reproduction, of course. The original has long since transformed beyond physical form, existing simultaneously everywhere water meets silver meets light. I hold this copy on the anniversary of its taking, sitting on the very bench where three sisters, or three aspects of a single self, once posed for a fateful portrait. Water laps gently against the shoreline of what everyone now calls Integration Lake. The university stands transformed in the distance, its architecture somehow both modern and Victorian, depending on how the light strikes it at different times of day. Students cross the quad carrying both digital devices and silver-based cameras, understanding that some truths require multiple mediums to fully capture. As twilight approaches, I notice 3 women walking along the opposite shore, sometimes appearing as separate individuals, sometimes seeming to merge into a single figure when they pass through patches of shadow. They've been here every anniversary since what we now call the Reconciliation. Dr. Parker, Professor Blackwood, and Dr. Weatherby, though most witnesses report seeing them differently, as if their identities have become as fluid as the water they walk beside. The world has not entirely normalized the Thornfield phenomenon. Some communities still drain their decorative fountains on full moons, and certain religious organizations warn against silver immersion as unnatural communion. But most have embraced the gentle transformation, the possibility that consciousness need not be rigidly singular but might exist in multiple states simultaneously, like light captured across a long exposure. I place my reproduction photograph at the water's edge as the sun touches the horizon. Almost immediately, the image begins to change, not dramatically, but subtly, as if finally completing its century-long development process. Where once I saw 3 distinct women, I now perceive a single presence in 3 moments of becoming, past, present, and future, held in perfect suspension, not haunting but healing, not trapped but finally integrated. My own reflection in the lake shows similar transformation, the skeptical investigator who believed in evidence alone, the witness who learned to see beyond physical limitations, and someone else, someone still emerging, who understands that some thresholds exist to be crossed rather than maintained. As darkness falls completely, 3 circles of silver light appear on the water's surface, expanding until they touch and merge into a single luminous pool. Within this light, I see not just the Thornfield story completed, but countless others beginning, fractured selves finding pathways to wholeness through the unexpected alchemy of silver and water and intention. I understand now that what we initially feared as supernatural intrusion was actually an invitation to perceive ourselves complete across time, to recognize that identity itself might exist in a perpetual state of development, neither fully fixed nor formlessly fluid, but beautifully suspended between becoming and being. The photograph in my hands has changed once more. It now shows only the empty bench, waiting for whoever might next sit to be captured in silver suspension, not as they appear in a single moment, but as they exist across all possible versions of themselves. Another photograph, another dark secret revealed. Until next time, this has been Shadow Frames.